Hey friends, this is Brennan here with Android Police, and we're going to check out the Galaxy S9 Plus camera. Is it actually as good as everyone makes it out to be? We'll check out the software, some of the photo modes, and of course, how well the photos and video look. First, let's check out the software. So there's a lot that Samsung packed into its software, and there's a bit of a redesign for this year's camera, and it looks a lot like an iOS device. If you look at here, you can swipe left and right to the different camera modes, and it kind of has that yellow look to it that we're familiar with on iOS devices. And depending on the mode you're in, you're able to hit full screen and it'll go to full screen. Sometimes you can hit a certain button and it'll allow you to adjust the color temperature or choose a filter. And then if you swipe down, it goes to selfie mode, which is kind of cool, but a lot of times I accidentally triggered this. It's a bit annoying. And if you want to, you can zoom in and out just by using this little toggle right here, or just hit the 1x or 2x button right here. And that's how you can move between the normal wide angle lens and the telephoto lens. And it's all great that you have those options, but sometimes it can become really frustrating. Features will disappear on you, or the touch area that it'll respond to is just really small. So sometimes you'll accidentally switch over to another setting when you're just trying to adjust a specific setting on that mode. So for instance, in Pro mode, especially when you're trying to change the shutter speed, if you're not right on the slider, it'll go to a different mode. And that's really frustrating. Overall, it matches my thoughts on Samsung software. They put everything in there, but the implementation needs a bit of work. So what about the actual photos themselves? Let's take a look at some of the modes that are available. There's a food mode that will make the center of your photo in focus and blur the rest just to highlight the food you're going to post on your Instagram. And for some reason, the auto white balance looks really bad here. And there's AR emoji. No one really questions whether or not this is a response to Apple's Animoji, but most could say it's not a good version of it. I guess it could be fun for a short period of time, but don't make your purchase based upon this feature. I mean, how often do you see people still using Animoji from their iPhone X? Also, it thinks my eyes are closed right now, but I'm just Asian. But there are some more traditional modes out there, like the sports mode. Essentially, what the sports mode is doing is making the shutter speed faster, so a moving subject isn't as blurry as it would be in auto mode. But for some reason, you have to activate this in settings. So you would have to go down here to edit camera modes and then go to rear camera, and you'll be able to activate sports. And also regular slow motion is not automatically activated. Kind of weird. Panorama is a classic feature that works really well. The stitching, I really can't notice it much at all. There is a difference if you hold your phone vertically or horizontally though. It's best to shoot holding the phone vertically because you cover more content. It's the same width, so why not have more height as well? And then there's live focus mode, which is pretty much portrait mode on the Pixel 2 XL or the iPhone. And the cool thing about it is that you can actually see the blur live, and you can adjust it if you're using the back camera. I'm using the front camera right here. I don't think it's very good though. You can kind of see how it's struggling right now. But if you go into settings, and of course this is a different picture, but if you go into settings, you can adjust the background blur in post, which is really cool. As you can see though, the image is a bit soft looking. Another really cool thing is the ability to use the wide angle. So you can just click on that and see the original image. Live focus mode works both on people and objects, but I would say that the auto mode probably looks a little bit better using a natural aperture. Let's take a look at some pictures. Auto mode produces way more contrast, and the natural bokeh blur looks way better than the artificial bokeh. The wide and telephoto options are really nice to have, and they produce some really great shots. You can see the wide version on the left, and then the tele version on the right. The dynamic range is pretty decent, and low light is really good. Crazy enough, noise is really absent from a lot of these low light shots, but I'm sure you've noticed this already. Things are a bit smudgy when you zoom in, and that's the trade-off of going with a wider aperture or a lower f-stop number. You can kind of think of an aperture like your eye. When you walk into a darker room, your eye will open up to let in more light. So you have a wider aperture or a lower f-stop number. So in the case of the Galaxy S9 Plus, it's a 1.5 at the widest aperture. And then the other mode is a 2.4. So a 2.4 will have a little bit less light being let in because it's closed up a little bit. So when you have a wider aperture that's letting in more light, the trade-off is that images just aren't as sharp. However, using your aperture to create a bokeh look is preferred way more than using software. And you can see that bokeh is generated naturally in this image here. So with that said, in a well-lit environment, pictures don't have to look as smudgy, and that's because of the aperture and the added detail that the sensor is able to gather. And that's also because Samsung's noise reduction software doesn't have to kick in. And you can kind of think of that noise reduction software kind of like a Photoshop airbrush. And since we're talking about Aperture, let's check out the Pro mode. And keep in mind, I'm trying to explain this in very simple terms. So if you're really, really versed in photography, cut me some slack. So one of the options you have is ISO, and the best way to kind of explain this is kind of like a speaker. With audio, you turn it up a bit and it gets louder. So in this case, it gets brighter. The downside of that is it can get a little bit noisy. So sometimes when you turn up a stereo speaker really loud, you can kind of hear that hiss. And that's similar to ISO. If you turn it up too high, you can get some noise. So ideally, you want to be able to gain down or use a lower ISO number to reduce noise. And like I mentioned with the sports mode, there's a shutter speed. So you're able to adjust the shutter speed, how long light is exposed to the sensor, and that'll determine how much blur is in the image. Just keep in mind that if a shutter is open for a shorter amount of time, you're letting in less light, so the image will be darker. And if you have it open longer, you're able to let in more light, but you'll have more motion blur. And that can be really cool depending on what you're going for. So in this image here, I just took it while we were driving. So the natural movement of me being in the car created this blur around the edges of the vehicle, and it looks really neat. And then focus is by far my favorite. So if you go into manual focus, you can actually see these green lines as you move around. This is called focus peaking, and it'll let you know what is in focus. I actually use this tool right here when I start my videos to make sure that this camera is in focus. And then you have white balance, which is able to determine what is true white of the image. And so you can manually adjust it if you want, or go to specific settings. I would suggest using auto. If you're not already familiar with white balance, it can be a bit difficult to figure out. And then the really cool mode, super slow-mo. Super slow-mo films in 960 frames per second, which is 32 times slower than normal, which is insane. But it films in 720p. Because of that, you can notice certain things you normally wouldn't be able to, like the refresh rate of certain displays or lights. You can slow things down you normally can't see with your naked eye, like this fan. You can even see the strings of a guitar vibrate and then edit it by going into the gallery. What the heck? Samsung's auto edit feature adds this crazy annoying music, and if you've ever sat next to someone scrolling through their ringtones, you know that feeling when you're scrambling and put your headphones in. Kind of like this video's sponsor, Optima Newforce. The B-Free 8s support AAC aptic X low latency technologies to provide high fidelity audio to any device. These truly wireless earphones feature near field magnetic induction technology for the best connection quality between the earpieces. With this technology, there's no need to receive and resend Bluetooth signals or maintain two separate Bluetooth connections between the source and earpieces. In addition, the left earpiece can be used alone in case users don't want to use both earphones. They're IPX5 water and weather resistant with up to 16 hours of battery life. The LED lights on the charging case indicate when the earphones are charging and how many full charges are left. There's also two types of spin fit ear tips to provide better noise isolation and maximize the usability among all users. The B-Free 8s have a built-in CVC noise-canceling microphone for calls and a button on the left earpiece to activate Siri, the Google Assistant, and adjust the volume. If you want to get your hands on the Newforce B-Free 8s, check out the link in the description. And then for something more normal, there's the normal slow motion mode. And then there's my favorite mode out of all of them, hyperlapse. The best way to think of hyperlapse is a lot like fast forward for your videos. It uses software to take the video that you filmed over a longer period of time and stabilizes it, and then speeds it up so minutes are condensed down to just a few seconds. How cool is this? Video overall is really good, and I would argue that it's probably better than the Pixel 2. Image stabilization is fantastic here. There's not a lot of visual noise. It's holding up really well for a low light video. Audio quality is really good because there's a microphone on the top and bottom edges, creating a stereo recording. And yes, it does work with external microphones for audio. And I mean, it does have a headphone jack as well, but Google seems to have removed this ability from their Pixel devices. They really need to fix this. A lot of people are saying that flagship cameras are pretty good overall, and it really comes down to taste. And for the most part, I would agree with that. But there's still something that just made me miss my Pixel 2 XL, and that probably comes down to the software experience. And even though there's a pro mode that I really wish was in the Pixel 2 XL, it was the software experience that made me not enjoy it as much. but I would say that the video mode on the Galaxy S9 Plus is fantastic, and it's probably better than the Pixel 2. Perhaps that's a reason why someone like Casey Neistat would be able to use a Galaxy device alone just for video. So what are your thoughts and what are your observations? Go ahead and leave some comments down below. And while you're down there, go ahead and check the description to check out the Optimum New Force Be Free 8s. Make sure to check out more Android Place videos and subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to check out more videos from me and my channel, go ahead and click on the image of me in the middle. And of course, thanks for watching Android Police. Until next time.